Hi, my name is Janessa Bayo, and we will going to discuss the language planning goals. So we have here the corpus, status, first stage, and acquisition planning. The motivation for language code planning may include a variety of factors to name, but a few at this point. It can be the wish to modernize a language so that it can be used in the field of technology and science. The desire for countrywide unification and standardization of language is to support national unity or improve communication, and opposing foreignization of vocabulary. For example, is that the influx of Anglicism for ideological reasons, such as the fear of being dominated by a foreign culture. Similarly, language usage planning is a highly politicized issue. Its motivation is frequently to keep or change the status of one social group or relatively to other groups to satisfy, diminish, or increase national sentiments, to prevent or allow for an influence of a foreign culture, to promote economic development, and to support one another culture values such as tradition or modernity. So the aspect of usage planning are status, prestige, and acquisition planning. So the various types and typologies and dichotomies of language planning goals have been proposed by a number of language planners. So, example is that the first one is Harman 1990 and Hodgin, Kaplan and Baldauf and here. So it should be kept in mind that classifications and terms used diverge, that no classification can be regarded as final. So, and that the objective of classification is to organize the field indicating the ways in which it is related to language and community rather than a goal in itself. Okay, so Naher defines 11 language planning goals. Okay, the first one is language revival, the attempt to turn a language with few or no surviving native speakers back into a normal means of communication. So the second one is language spread. So this is the attempt to increase the number of speakers of a language. And then the third one is the language maintenance. It is a preservation of the use of a group's native language as a first or second language where pressures threaten or cause a decline in the status of language. The fourth is interlingual communication. So, facilitation of linguistic communication between members of distinct speech communities. Okay, so the fifth, language standardization. Okay, this is the attempt to transform original language or dialect into one that is accepted as the major language or standard language of the region. Okay, number six, language purification. So, prescription of usage in order to preserve the linguistic purity of language and block foreign influences. Yeah. And number um, seven, language reform. Deliberate change in specific aspect of language, such as spelling or grammar, in order to facilitate use. So that is for linguistic form. Number eight, lexical modernization. It is a word creation or adaptation. Okay, number nine, terminology unification. It is a development of unified terminologies, primarily in technical domains. Number 10, it is stylistic simplification, simplification of language usage in lexicon, grammar, and style. Last, it is a auxiliary code standardization. Standardization of marginal auxiliary aspect of language as designed for the deep place names or rules of transliteration of and transcription. So I want you to take note that uh, in item 7 to 11, it is a uh, true goal is meant in a technical rather than functional, ideological, and political sense. So these items refer to language corpus planning. However, corpus planning is merely instrumental to usage planning because the ultimate goal of any corpus change is affecting the ways. So example is context, so in which a language is used. For example, considered lexical modernization, that is increasing the vocabulary of a language by adding new words. Okay, so this is also means that usage planning as an items 1 to 5 in the list above. So this one. The at the same time involves status planning of a given language. So status planning is about society, while corpus planning is about code. Okay, so in item 5, standardization is lifting one language variety to a privileged position. So, however, standardization is also used sometimes in a different sense of or to refer to introducing norms of correct speaking or writing by reducing variation by means of linguistic unification of several similar dialects or fixing invented new forms. So that is engineering a standard language that is not identical with any existing variety. So it can be also used in a way that is neutral between these two options. Okay, so to codify a language typically means to develop a writing system. So set up official rules to grammar, orthography, pronunciation, syntax, and vocabulary, as well as publish grammar books and dictionaries. So I want you to take note that codification is an aspect of corpus planning. So and as for item 6, language purification, it is considered with influencing the corpus but already the very term based on the metaphorical, value-laden, positively connoted notions of purity. So makes obvious that underlying an ideological assumption. So as we can hardly think of purification as a mere technicality, that is without being simultaneously aware of its social implications. So it is can be grouped both with corpus planning and status planning. Okay, Kaplan and Baldauf. So, nagpropose sila a wider set of planning goals and their categorization. They divided language planning into four categories. So, okay, including status planning, corpus planning, acquisition planning, and the first stage or image planning. So, distinct from the status issue. So the most significant terms Kaplan and Baldauf add to the list given are the first one is pertaining to status planning, officialization, turning a language to an official language of a country. Okay, and then the nationalization, it is a change in language use such as a language that was formerly a language of a group or region starts being used nationwide and being regarded as a component of national identity. And then the proscription is a ban on a language in some or all spheres, that is example at the public places and or at school or in person. Okay, the second one is pertaining to corpus planning. So we have here the graphization, devising, spelling rules, okay, for the vocabulary of a language. And then the grammatication is uh, the extraction and formulation of rules that describe how a language is structured. And then the last one is lexication. It is a selection and development of vocabulary. And then, so the last one, it is a pertaining to prestige planning. So only one, it is a intellectualization or making a language acceptable in the function of high prestige by promoting its use in literature, media usage, professions, and science. Okay, so last one, it is a pertaining to acquisition and planning. So we have here the reacquisition, regaining language skills which have been lost due to not using the language in questions for some period. Okay, the second, foreign language or the second language, it's a planning which foreign languages will be taught at school at which levels. And the last is a language shift. Language spread at the cost of another. Yeah. And okay, let's. So beside the goal included in the acquisition planning is language maintenance, which they define in the same way of Nahir. Okay, so we have here the categories of language status. Language status is a concept closely related to language prestige and language usage. So it is used in the literature on the subject sometimes with the meaning it has in the general, everyday language, and sometimes as a special term defined as a set of several distinct determinants. Class and Stewart, uh, they both proposed that it depends on the following four attributes. So we have here the four attributes. The first one is language origin, whether a given language is indigenous or imported to speech community. And the second is degree standardization, the extent of development of a formal set of norms that define correct usage. Okay, we have here the juridical status, the okay, sole official language, the joint official language, the regional official language, the promoted language, tolerated language, and prescribed language. Okay, next, vitality. The ratio or percent of users of a language to another variable, like the total population. So Close and Stewart distinguished various classes of statistical distribution, while lines can be drawn arbitrarily at different percentages. Okay, so another concept not included in the list but also occurs in the legislation in some countries is national language. Okay, so the use of this term is not quite consistent, designating a particular language as being a country's national language frequently means that it is intended to perform a unifying and nation building function. So it can apply to an official language that is also indigenous. So example in the constitutions of India, Pakistan, and the Philippines. To stress its unifying and separatist function, so linked to the history and authenticity. So in some countries, legislation, though a distinction is made between official language and the national language. So as in the Central African Republic, where French is official and Sangho is national. So Kenya, where English is official and the Swahili is national. So up to 1996, Switzerland had three languages that were both official and national, plus the national language Romansh that was official in the other district. So we have here the in Mauritania, Arabic is both the official language and a national one. So there are three other indigenous languages: the Polar, the Sonanki, and the Wolof. So they are national, and a range of other languages are spoken too. In contrast to both Swiss and Mauritanian usage, the attribute national is also sometimes used to differentiate between a regional official language and the national official language. Okay, so an official minority language is an official or recognized language spoken by a minority in a given country. So, a foreign language is a language spoken abroad which is learned and taught in a country in order to make possible external communication with foreign speakers. So, the second language differs from a foreign language by being applied in communication in multiple in a settings in the country in questions rather than abroad, and in communication in a foreigners only. So, lastly, the heritage of or community languages are all languages in use in a society other than the dominant or national language. So we have here the status and corpus planning. The status planning changes the function and uses of language or language variety. So that is affect who can use it in which situation and for which purposes. So the status of a language or a variety relative to some other alternatives codes. The corpus planning changes the resources of a language variety, usually making it more adequate to the needs of communication. So we have here the acquisition planning and the educational policy. So these are the policies. The first one is access policy, personal policy, curriculum policy, methods and material policy, resourcing policy, community policy, and evaluation policy. The ultimate goals of language policies and practices in this area reflect the political interest of the players, so which do not need to be explicitly formulated. So, commonly acknowledged is political goals of a particular policy are the wish to equip a society with a shared language that would contribute to socioeconomic integrations and the feeling of national unity, or the desire, sometimes contradiction, contradictory to the former, to make a society share a tool of communication with a wider international community, thus improving its prospects for modernity and economic development. So that's could be all, and thank you, and God bless.